Need building? You are the one who's running around everywhere. So they one of those lines. Really? Then maybe we can hang out with you.
All right, thank you.
There were people on their bikes. It's nice bikes. Like these tires, bright green rim.
It doesn't say.
Here you got to scroll down.
What's that?
You got to scroll down. History. Writing on San Francisco.
We need to clear up some.
I tried to get someone else to kiss me. That was the money.
Yeah.
19-year-old.
Yeah, we actually have that in our that this I would get. You can't have different things.
All right. So we have a quorum, right? So we have 5, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Do you need a minute?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right. Good morning. This meeting of the California High-Speed Rail Authority will come to order. Welcome, everybody. And would the secretary please call the roll?
Vice Chair Schenk?
Here.
Vice Chair Richards?
Here.
Mr. Umberg? Mr. Hartnett?
Here.
Mr. Rossi?
Here.
Chairman Richard?
I'm here. Mr. Hartnett, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance this morning?
Let's join together. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, let me get my agenda out in front of me. I, of course, Okay, so we will begin with public comment. And let me just take a moment, as we always do. We afford our elected officials an opportunity to speak first, and then we go in order. I know one name I'm going to come up with is Supervisor Henry Perea. He's right there. Supervisor Perea, good morning and welcome.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, member of the board. Just want to welcome you. Good to be here with you today. We understand that you may be coming to Fresno in April for a meeting, and if that still works out, whether it's April or May, we'd like to extend any assistance we can give you all in helping plan and organize the meeting so that it's what you need. We'd be happy to do that. But great being here with you today. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor. We are planning throughout the years we've done in the past to hold meetings throughout the state. We appreciate the fact a lot of people travel long distances to come here, and so I believe we will be going to Fresno at some point. Mr. Morales has been working on that. We will next take our speakers in the order in which these cards are received. Brad Johns, and he'll be followed by David Schwagel.
Good morning.
Morning, Mr. Johns.
My name is Brad Johns. I'm from Hanford. I'm a farmer, second generation, and I want to welcome you. I think high-speed rail is the greatest thing that ever happened to this area, the region, job creation, and so on. So I'd like to dispel one myth right off the bat. Some of these dairymen have been saying that cows cannot exist next to high-speed rail, and I went looking and I found photographic evidence that the cows can adjust to just darn near anything. And I'd like to present this to Mr. Richards.
Could you give it to the Secretary, please? For those of you watching at home, Mr. Johns has just shown us a picture of cows surrounding a UFO that has landed. I'm not going to say where I think it's landed, but in any case, somewhere.
It was one of the pastures around Hanford. Who knows? Anyway, to start off with, I represent myself and a group of farmers on the east side. I've been working behind the scenes. I've done quite a little bit on behalf of high-speed rail. But to start off with, I'd like to read a letter by Kathleen Jorgensen, which is the chairman of the Kings County Democratic Central Committee. We're in support of an eastern alignment for the Hanford project. It starts as follows. As a longtime resident of Hanford, I would like to address the Commission concerning the selection of the route for the high-speed rail. I first want you to know I have a group of about 15 people that went to the City Council member on December 12th and requested the Council select a route preference for the Commission for the eastern alignment. Their reasons are as follows. The eastern route would be less disruptive to the City of Hanford, for the growth is mainly to the west, and the west route would be disruptive for the city services. Secondly, the City of Hanford has received a large amount of developers' fees for the western alignment and are very concerned about the train going to the west and causing illegal liability for our city. 3, the eastern route would be more regional route and would be more used by the Visalia, Tulare communities east of Hanford. 4th, the large and most industrial park east of Hanford. And there's been at least one large company that is interested in bringing jobs related to the high-speed rail and locating in that area. We went back to the City Council in January. We hoped that they would submit a preference. However, there was a contingent of anti-high-speed rail people. I think you know who they are. A group, and the majority, did not have the resolve to make a decision and face the opposition of the group. But there was one brave council member who asked that the council do pick a route, an eastern route, but the others didn't have the courage to act on that. As a spokesperson for the group, I'm requesting that the Commission act upon the wishes of the group of residents of Kings County who actually have been willing to state preferences. We know no other group in our area has requested a western route at all. We hope that the Commission will not punish our city and our elected officials' lack of courage to do what is best for the city and the residents living therein. So we're urging you to pick the eastern route. Now, for myself as a farmer...
And if I could just ask you to... we're going to try to keep the comments to 3 minutes. Actually, what I'm going to do
That's for this group.
I'm sorry?
I submitted two requests, one for myself and then one for this group.
Okay.
That's okay.
All right.
I can wait.
Oh, so what you're saying is, well, Mr. Jones, why don't you just finish up?
Now, as for myself,
Now I understand why this is stapled together.
Yeah.
Okay.
As for myself as a farmer, as I stated, I've cleared you 2 miles worth of track on the eastern alignment now with the farmers that are there to stop these problems that are going through the city of Hanford. You'll find no opposition there whatsoever. There are no Indian burial mounds. There are no problems. On the western side, however, as you get into Layton, that is a historic campsite of the Indians. You might get surprised when you start into those areas. I suspect that groups like Mr. Ficcato and his anti-people are just praying to God you go there so that turns into a death nail instead of a blessing. So the western route, as this letter states, we've got a developer that's already got his plans in place, and the city would have problems with that. But as for myself, I've located a gentleman by the name of Mr. Richard Fromm, who has a private equity fund out in New York City. I've hooked them up with Diana Gomez. He wants to come in with private equity money. He has $1 billion, and he wants to partner with High Speed Rail and build all your train stations for you. Because of Mr. Fromm's involvement, he has also brought in a gentleman by the name of Mr. Steve Silverman, who has a manufacturing idea about collecting all the Class II plastics in the state of California and building you a composite plastic railroad tie, which is tough and will replace wood and is already being used now. So he is yet to get a meeting with Diana on that respect. So these are things that are coming in on the private sector to help you out and will bring jobs almost immediately. So with that, I respectfully submit and request that you consider an eastern alignment through our city, please. Thank you and have a blessed day.
Thank you, Mr. Johns. Appreciate you traveling up here this morning. David Schwegel, followed by Mark Kyle.
Happy Valentine's Day, fellow leaders.
Good morning.
David Schwegel. I recall a Love on High Speed Rail video where a boy sees girl, it's love at first sight, boy goes to all kinds of new destinations, then girl changes trains, never to be seen again. Wish that boy had known the system a bit better. Luckily, we have guys that know the system quite well. U.S. High Speed Rail Association President and CEO Andy Coons just wrapped up a very impressive High Speed Rail Summit in Washington, D.C., and Mr. Coons also provided a very compelling article in this month's Institute of Transportation Engineers Southern California section newsletter. Senate President Pro Tem Darrell Steinberg gave Transform's Executive Director Stuart Cohen a prestigious Environmental Leadership Award, and Transform's Transportation Choices Summit and Advocacy Day is coming up here in Sacramento in late April. We do need to make sure that we show some love for our opposition as well. Energy analyst Gregor McDonald reminds us that automobile and fossil fuel interests outspend rail and renewables 100-1 in media campaigns, creating widespread misinformation and making mountains out of molehills. Educating our friends, particularly those in the smog-infested city of Bakersfield, that to my knowledge has the worst air quality in the nation, we may want to remind them of the tremendous air quality benefits that high-speed rail has to offer them. So let's continue our fine job of showing love to both our supporters and our opponents alike to expedite project success. Again, happy Valentine's Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Mark Kyle, followed by Jeremy Smith.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and board members. Mark Kyle, Operating Engineers, Local 3. Pleasure to stand here before you on the cusp of a new phase of the project. Operating Engineers, as you know, represents construction workers. We represent approximately 24,000 workers in Northern California. I'm here today because I want to talk about an issue that's been raised previously with this board, project labor agreements. It's come up a number of times, but most recently in the last couple of months it's been brought up by a group called the Associated Builders Contractors. And I want to go on the record that Operating Engineers supports project labor agreements. We believe that they're a benefit not only to the project, but to the workers and ultimately will be to the state of California, so that we have a little bit more of a balanced record in support of project labor agreements. As you probably know, the ABC is basically a lobbying and PR effort with very little true relation to economic development. And they're driven by a right-wing extremist anti-union credo, and the real interests are to pay their workers as little as possible, and if they could get away with it, probably pay them nothing, and also to keep their benefits down. So I ask you to set aside their paranoid, nihilistic worldview, set aside their half-truths and their distortions and fabrications, and in fact look at the reality of project labor agreements in California, where historically the project labor agreements have brought labor peace to the projects, big and small, throughout California. They provided stability and continuity in the workplace. They provided clear procedures and guidelines for labor and management. They provided project workers an opportunity to earn a middle-class income. And probably most importantly, from your perspective, they've provided projects the ability to come in on time and on budget. So when the time is appropriate for this board to consider project labor agreements and this agency to consider project labor agreements, please know that we stand in support of that effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle.
And since I have 30 seconds left, I just want to say that I, too, have 2 adorable children, but couldn't bring them out for propaganda purposes because they had to attend school today.
In your remaining time, I'll tell you that Frank DeRosa says hello. So.
Good morning, Mr. Chair,
Jeremy,
members
Jeremy
of the authority.
Smith.
I'm here on behalf of Robbie Hunter, the president of the State Building and Construction Trades Council. He asked me to appear for him to read some excerpts from a letter he just recently sent to all of you regarding a letter you received from the Associated Builders and Contractors. I wish to respond to the many inaccuracies in the letter that you received from the Associated Builders and Contractors about the community benefits agreement that is included as Addendum 8 of the authority's request for proposals. Before turning to the many errors in the letter, it bears emphasis that ABC is a far right-wing political advocacy organization with a national agenda of attacking labor unions, not a true representative of the California construction industry. ABC's member contractors include only about 0.3% of the state's licensed contractors. With that background, I want to go ahead and address a few points from the letter that the ABC wrote to you all. As the authority knows, the ABC letter is wrong in claiming that the CBA would exclude workers who are not union members from performing project work. Section 5.1 provides that CSEs and unions agree not to engage in any form of discrimination on the ground of membership in a labor organization in hiring and dispatching workers for the project. And Section 6.2 provides that no employee covered by this agreement shall be required to join any union as a condition of being employed or remaining employed for the completion of the project work. As the authority also knows, the ABC letter is wrong in claiming that the CBA excludes contractors not otherwise signatory to labor agreements from performing project work. Again, Section 3.2 provides that the CSE will not be obligated to sign any local area or national collective bargaining agreement as a condition of performing work within the scope of this agreement. And Section 13.4 provides that contractors shall have the absolute right to award contracts or subcontracts for project work to any qualified contractor, notwithstanding the existence or non-existence of any agreements between such contractor and any union. The ABC letter also gets matters backwards in claiming that the community benefits agreement will make it more difficult to achieve the authority's goal of providing job opportunities for nationally targeted workers. The CBA supersedes the normal hiring hall provisions of those pre-existing labor agreements by requiring that qualified national targeted workers be given first preference for dispatch. Section 7.5.1 provides that the unions and the contractors agree that so long as they possess the requisite skills and qualifications, national targeted workers shall be first referred to the project for project work. And Section 7.10 provides that when national targeted workers are requested by a CSE, the unions will refer such workers regardless of their place in the union hiring halls list and normal referral procedures. The ABC letter is also wrong in claiming that the CBA will deter small business participation. To the contrary, by allowing subcontracts to be awarded without regard to union status and providing all contractors with a ready source for skilled journeypersons and apprentices, the CBA serves as the basis for a successful small business outreach program. The ABC also asserts without any basis that the CBA will increase project costs. As we all know, this is a prevailing wage project. The biggest cost drivers for any project are wages and benefits. Those are set by the prevailing wage law, so there's no issue there. And I know I'm almost out of time. I'll just finish with this. The CBA also contains procedures for settling all grievances and jurisdictional disputes through arbitration, and provides in Section 4.1 that there shall be no strikes, work stoppages, slowdowns, or other destructive activity for any reason by a union, and there shall be no lockout by the contractor. And finally, Section 4.6 allows for immediate expedited arbitration and huge fines if this provision is violated. I'll stop there. My time is up. Thank you for the time this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. And I want to assure you that if you could tell Mr. Hunter that I received and read the entire letter, I appreciate your coming to highlight it today. Thank you. Next is Tony Castillo, followed by Robert Allen. Morning, Mr. Castillo.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. I, too, speak before you in support of the two previous speakers. I represent the Northern California Laborers Training Trust Fund, and we are thrilled that this project is moving forward. We fully support it, and we appreciate all the time and effort that the authorities putting into this, making it happen, bringing in good jobs to the Central Valley, a historically depressed area with high unemployment, and the laborers, as well as the brothers and sisters in the building trades. We see this as an opportunity to provide an economic ladder to all those individuals in the community who are looking for a career in construction. So with that, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Castillo. Robert Allen, followed by Leanne Eager. Morning, Bob.
Yes, a number of times I have appeared before you speak against the blended rail, against running high-speed rail on the Caltrain commute tracks. It's exceedingly dangerous, and it's a hazard. And I urge you to consider seriously going from Santa Clara north along the Amtrak UP line through Mulford to Oakland, and to build a new intermodal station with BART, where BART crosses over that UP track. That there be a good intermodal connection between BART and high-speed rail. I've suggested that there be, I like having more than 90 seconds. Thanks a lot.
That's okay, Bob. Just go ahead and say what you need to say.
I'd also like to have you urge the formation of a committee to improve BART, make BART a 5-county agency. I realize that is not your particular province, but I think you would be able to have a great influence in making the 3-county BART into a 5-county agency and tie it in with high-speed rail. You could do much for both agencies. Thank you.
Hey, Bob, before you leave, I just want to say we've known each other for a long time, and I don't want you to feel that people aren't listening to what you're saying. What I'd like you to consider is that under the Bond Act, we have to terminate the high-speed rail project at the Transbay Terminal in San Francisco. So I know you're a longtime rail guy, and I certainly understand what you're saying about bringing it up the east side and and maybe rebuilding the West Oakland BART station there where it could cross. And there's some exciting possibilities there, but the problem that the challenge we see is it doesn't necessarily comply with the Bond Act of getting into San Francisco. So you might want to think about that a little bit and help us think that through.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, and Vice Chair Shank was pointing out that there's probably more agreement you would find than you would imagine. So, anyway, thank you. Leanne Eager, and followed by our last speaker, Michael Quigley.
Good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Eager.
Happy Valentine's Day. Obviously, you all know that things are hopping in Fresno. We have been continuing to meet with those folks along the alignment, ensuring that they have places to go, places to move. Now that some of them have been getting offer letters, obviously things are really picking up. But I do want to thank you, because some of those benefits that we had been talking about for the last 3 years that we knew were coming are finally coming. We have been getting calls from companies from Tennessee, from Minnesota, from New York, who want to come to the Central Valley because they know that the high-speed rail is coming now, finally. Now that people are actually getting offer letters, they go, oh, gee, it must be coming. I better start looking. So we've been talking to them, and obviously what we've been telling them is that we are, at the EDC, we're more than willing to help them. We're more than willing to assist them in moving their business here, so long as they open an office in the Central Valley, so long as they hire our folks in the Central Valley, so long as they spend their money in the Central Valley. Our doors are open, and we're more than willing to help them. And we obviously have had quite a few folks who are interested in moving there. We have put a broker committee together, and we just met last week in ensuring that we have spaces for not just those folks who have to move in alignment, but for those businesses that want to move in. We're putting together a housing subcommittee so that when we have 20,000 new people put to work, we have places for them to live. So all of those things that we had been planning for are finally coming to fruition. So those of you who it's coming your way, you all need to start getting prepared also, because this is a very exciting time. I gave a speech not too long ago at the Real Estate Association about why Fresno, why invest in Fresno. And of course, one of the major topics there was high-speed rail. And if we are the center of the universe for high-speed rail, which we know we are, then all things will come to us as they are now. I do want to say one quick thing. Supervisor Prey and I won't be here at the March 7th meeting. We'll be in Washington, D.C. on our COG One Voice trip, but of course high-speed rail is on the top of our agenda, so we'll still be fighting for things across the country. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Eager. We appreciate that report, and I just want to say that if you start getting calls from companies in Texas, let Mr. Rossi know so he can let the governor know, because it'd be very interesting if people are seeing their backside as they're moving in this direction, but that's just an editorial comment. And Supervisor Perea will give you the honorary appearance slip for your trip to Washington so that you can maintain your record. Our final speaker, Michael Quigley. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. My name is Michael Quigley. I'm the Manager of Government Affairs with the California Alliance for Jobs. We represent the union construction industry here in Northern and Central California, representing over 2,500 union construction contractors and 80,000 union construction workers from the basic crafts. I'm here in support of the message delivered by my colleagues in the laborers and operators and building trades, and also to commend this body with the progress being made on this project. As you know, you are in the public works procurement process, which is something that always is tricky and controversial by the very nature of the fact that you have to pick the best available bidder on a project that's ultimately going to be the largest infrastructure project in this country. That's no easy task given the hurdles and obstacles that we'll be facing this project as we move forward, but I feel confident in this body's ability to make that decision. It's important, as you've been doing, that you maintain the transparency in your process, and I think that the recent criticism that you've been receiving about your alleged PLA agreements from the ABC is completely outlandish, because this body has made no agreements with labor unions into that concern. However, to dispute what they say about PLAs as a viable method of providing a highly trained workforce for an infrastructure project of this scale, I would say that the industry has been using PLAs for decades. It's a method of securing labor on a project of this scale you are going to need as many highly trained and productive workers as California can muster. The benefits of PLA allow you to have a defined labor cost for your project. Another concern as you move forward is making sure that your costs are within your budget. You have a consistent standard of training through a PLA agreement. You have consistency in the quality of your labor workforce. You have a workforce that has greater productivity per man-hour in the field. And you also have tertiary benefits in terms of, just as Henry Ford paid his workers enough to buy the cars that they were manufacturing, a PLA allows you to support a workforce and support middle-class jobs in a way that benefits the local economic development and community agreements. So with that, I would thank you and look forward to working with you more in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Quigley. Appreciate that. Okay, that concludes the public session this morning. Yes, the minutes should reflect that Mr. Umberg is also in attendance at the meeting. Thank you. Mr. Flens.
Yes, the first agenda item is approval of the minutes from January 23rd, 2013 meeting.
All right. It's been moved by Vice Chair Schenk and seconded by Mr. Hartnett. Could you call the roll, please?
Vice Chair Schenk?
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Umberg?
Yes.
Mr. Hartnett?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi? Chairman Richard?
Yes. Let me just say a word about item 2. There's a slight misnomer. It should not be election of officers. The normal election of officers takes place usually in the July meeting, and that is certainly when we'll do that. I had asked that this item be placed on because it was a year ago that following Mr. Umberg, I had assumed the gavel, and I just felt that it was important not to presume that going beyond the 1-year period, given our bylaws, so I did ask this to be placed on the agenda at this point, but it really should just, at this point, I think, pertain to the board chair. So, Mr. Flens, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I don't. I would just turn it over to the board members to deliberate on election of president.
Okay. Vice Chair Richards.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would propose, as our counsel has just told us and the chairman has noted, I would propose that the current chair's position, his first term, be extended to end concurrent with our next scheduled meeting for the placement or election of new officers for this board. And that would be my proposal and motion.
And maybe just for clarification, and that date would be in July of 2013 when we would.
Okay. Vice Chair Schenk.
So this isn't really a term. I mean, you just filled out someone's term, so you could go for 2 more terms, right?
Well, why don't we address that issue when we get to July?
Well, I just want to make sure that would be my preference.
Oh, I appreciate that. I think that what I was trying to deal with is that we have bylaws that basically govern the terms, but as I read them, there's also a 1-year period, and so I just felt that the 1 year having expired, that something needed to be addressed. So we can certainly, I think, at the normal time, at the beginning of the fiscal year, when the board looks at these issues, we can decide at that point what we want to do. Okay. I intend to vote no on this motion. No, it's been moved and seconded. Could you call the roll?
Vice Chair Schenk?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Umberg? Mr. Hartnett?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
True friends.
No, it's good to show a little dissension.
Yeah.
Everything's unanimous.
Chairman Richard?
Yes. Thank you. We'll continue to do this for the next several months and certainly appreciate all the support and good work of my colleagues, so thank you. Next item is the consideration of the draft California State Rail Plan. And Mr. Morales, do you want to tee this up?
Matt Robinson will make the presentation, then we'll have Bill Bronte from Caltrans. Caltrans is responsible for developing the statewide rail plan. We have been participating with them to develop that. What we'll be doing today is just giving the board an overview of the draft plan as it has been released, and then now we'll be out for public comment and review and ultimately finalization and approval by the CTC.
I think board members have met Matt Robinson, but he joined us just a little bit ago from the Department of Finance, and he's been doing a superb job representing the authority before the legislature. So, good morning, Matt.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the authority. Thank you for having me. I hope to be the first one to wish you a happy Valentine's Day, but a couple of people got out in front of me. As the chair pointed out, my name is Matt Robinson. I am the Deputy Director of Legislation for the authority. Over the last several months, the authority has worked with Caltrans staff, the Federal Railroad Administration, the Business Transportation and Housing Agency, soon to be the Transportation Agency, as well as our rail partners throughout the state to develop the initial draft of the California State Rail Plan, which was released last Friday for public comment. Specifically, the authority worked to incorporate the statewide rail modernization program and the high-speed rail project's phased implementation plan, which are both outlined in our 2012 business plan. The state rail plan, as well as the authority's business plan, will serve as a guide for future federal and state investments in an integrated network of high-speed, urban, commuter, and intercity rail throughout the state of California. The plan is a working document and will evolve as planning progresses towards this integration. As Jeff mentioned, Bill Bronte, Caltrans Chief Division of Rail, is here today to provide a brief presentation on the state rail plan. And Caltrans is requesting that the board authorize Chief Executive Officer Morales to issue a letter of support pending any comments you all may have. If you would like to comment on the plan, I ask that you submit them directly to me by March 1st. Yes. That is all I have, and I'll turn it over to Bill Bronte.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Mr. Bronte, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a good thing I'm not an engineer. It took me 3 semesters before I passed my first semester of calculus. I figured engineering was not a wise thing to go into. As Matt and Mr. Morales noted, that I'm here to provide an overview of the state rail plan. Did you get that one? Okay. As Matt noted, we've been working on this for an extended period of time with your staff of the FRA, and we think we have a very good product moving forward. To provide some background on why we do this and why we've done this, California's had a state rail plan. We've been doing one for about the last 25 years. We do it, it's a 10-year plan that we update every 2 years. Very honestly, it had become kind of a pro forma plan until 2008, when the Congress passed the Passenger Rail Investment and Improvement Act in October of 2008. That plan established a funding program and a congressional or a federal partner for high-speed and intercity passenger rail. The subsequent $8 billion of stimulus funding basically was what funded the initial part of the Passenger Rail Investment Act. As part of that, because they were going to become a federal partner, the feds wanted to make sure that adequate planning was being done before they gave states any money. So they basically said that to get high-speed intercity passenger rail funding, which was created under PREA, you had to have a comprehensive state rail plan. So the federal plan is a 20-year long-range plan. It takes high-speed rail, conventional speed rail, both freight and passenger, and attempts to develop an integrated planning document. The rail plan is going to serve as the basis for the vision for rail in California and will guide federal and state investments in passenger and freight rail. Basically what you see up there right now, I'm hoping you can see it. You guys have a chance to see that up there? Okay. Basically establishes the vision moving forward. The California has a premier customer-focused rail system that successfully moves people and products while enhancing economic growth and the quality of life. Here are the chapters of the State Rail Plan. It's about a 350-page document. It has another 200 pages of very detailed appendices, and it's a tough read, but I think it will be very worthwhile as we move forward. The highlights of the plan, just to briefly summarize them, is dramatically more comprehensive and wide-ranging than any plan done previously. It supports the goals of the State Transportation Plan to develop an integrated multimodal transportation system, rail being part of that larger transportation system. It recognizes the role rail plays as an alternative to other passenger and freight travel modes and as a relief to highway and air travel congestion. It supports the goals of improving air quality, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, conserving fuel, and contributing to the sustainable land use called for in Senate Bill S-375 and AB 32's greenhouse gas emission goals. The plan establishes a framework for developing an integrated high-speed intercity and commuter rail network as was envisioned in the authority's 2012 business plan. The plan also recognizes that institutional roles may change resulting from the enactment of legislation that authorizes the creation of joint powers authorities to assume management oversight of the Pacific Surfliner and San Joaquin Corridor services. The plan also recognizes the change at the state level with the creation of the Transportation Agency, so there will be more of an opportunity to assure that there will be coordinated planning as we continue to move forward. The plan also describes the planned passenger rail system to be in place in 2025 following the initial commencement of operations over the initial high-speed rail segment between Merced and the San Fernando Valley that hopefully will begin in 2022. The plan also highlights additional expansions to intercity and commuter rail routes to integrate with the high-speed rail operations and meet the demand for anticipated population growth. The plan also plans for the expansion of commuter rail services and new commuter and intercity rail services. And I think one of the key issues that we need to remember is this is the first plan. It's going to be updated on an ongoing basis as we continue to move forward with the development of the state's rail systems. The authority has had, as Matt noted, a lot of input. The authority engaged both the Northern and Southern California Working Partners Group, basically comprised of, in the north, the Capital Corridor, Altamont Commuter Express, and Caltrans with the intercity rail system. Union Pacific and Burlington Northern Santa Fe are the rail partners in that particular area. In Southern California, you have Coaster and Metrolink primarily, but also the related Metro area rail in the Southern California region as well. The planning and modeling scenarios that were used in the plan basically came from the Northern and Southern California planning groups. The authority staff was also part of the plan's advisory committee, along with representatives of the Class 1 railroads, the short line railroads, the Capital Corridor, the San Joaquin Corridor, the Losan Corridor, and on the Losan Corridor we had representatives both from the southern group between San Diego and Los Angeles and the Northern California part of it running between Los Angeles all the way up to San Luis Obispo. The Coast Rail Coordinating Council, who was attempting to develop service between San Francisco and Los Angeles along the coast route, was part of it, as well as the Business Transportation and Housing Agency. Authority staff was extensively engaged during the development of the administrative draft, which, as Matt noted, was released last Friday. The plan is also, consistent with the authority's 2012 business plan. It integrates the modeling. It provides consistent planning scenarios, and we'll be refining and working and continuing to develop the plan as we continue to move forward. This should be a very familiar map to all of you. So in that sense, I'm not going to go into it outside of it. Does show the unified system, the early investment in Beta Basin in Southern California, and also with Caltrain. Here is the state-supported routes. These, I think, are probably very familiar to everyone. The San Joaquin Corridor running down what will be the spine, the valley. The Capital Corridor running between, basically starting in Oakland, either going to San Francisco or down to San Jose or to Sacramento. Pacific Surfliner operating between San Luis Obispo all the way down to San Diego. Then you also have the Amtrak long-distance routes, the Southwest Chief, Sunset Limited, and the Coast Daylight. Also familiar, I think, to all of you are...
Isn't that the Coast
Starlight.
Isn't that the Coast Starlight?
Coast Starlight. Did I say Starlight?
No, you
said Daylight.
Oh, Daylight. No, Starlight. I'm sorry. Yes. The Daylight is a train that is what they call the Coast Route.
It becomes a daylight train, but...
Yes, I was working for the department and helped get that started many years ago. Anyway, the commuter routes, Altamont Commuter Express, Caltrain on the Peninsula, Coaster in San Diego, and Metrolink throughout the Los Angeles Basin. Here, I think this kind of shows how all of the various groups come together. What is to me the most, anyway, this is really the exciting part of the plan. You take the commuter routes, you take the existing intercity routes, you take the long-distance routes, and all of a sudden you have a network. And that is one of the things the State Rail Plan tries to do, is it supports the blended or the 2012 business plan, which attempts to really bring forward this concept of an integrated network. This is one of those situations where, very honestly, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. We have an exciting opportunity here as part of this initial State Rail Plan to really bring all of those particular entities together, all those services together, and by working jointly can develop a system that will help initiate and get your high-speed rail system in place. We'll feed that system, and then we'll continue to serve the system as you continue to develop. In addition to the state rail plans, we also have the development of service development plans. These are more granular looks at the vision that's in the state rail plan and basically begins putting some meat onto the skeleton. How do you initiate service? How do you meet the high-speed rail system? How do you create new services? As noted, that we have San Joaquin Corridor. We're developing an initial service development plan for service to begin in 2018, and we'll be working with the authority to develop a service development plan for 2022 when we're anticipating operating over the initial construction segment. Pacific Surfliner North, Pacific Surfliner South, the Coast Daylight, and a new and developing corridor that we think is going to be very exciting moving forward into the future is the Coachella Valley with the population growth in the Palm Springs area. And Capital Corridor is in the process of developing their own service development plan since they are a separate entity from Caltrans. As Matt noted, the rail plan went public. The administrative draft of the plan went public on February 8th. We're now seeking public comment. We'll have open houses. The first one was night before last here in Sacramento. We have another open house in Oakland tonight. And then next week we'll be in San Diego, Los Angeles, and Fresno. There'll be a statewide webinar on February 26th. And the service development plans will be done in May. And the final state rail plan is projected before the end of June. As noted, we've had an ongoing stakeholder meetings with state and regional agencies. I apologize.
No, that's all right. Vice Chair Schenck had a question.
Is that enough time? Have we gotten any feedback that may not be enough time for public comment?
Given the timelines and constraints we've got with our contract, we would have liked to have had more time, but we feel that because this is really going to be an ongoing and evolving document, that we'll come out with this version of the state rail plan in June. One of the things, because law was not changed here in California, we are immediately going to be rolling into an update of the state rail plan to meet the state requirements, which requires a draft to be delivered to the CTC in October and a final in March. So we're going to have an opportunity to continue updating both the plan and the service development plans and modeling contained within that.
Well, even though these things go out, like over the internet, and it takes a while. People have busy lives and they don't focus on this. I wanted to make sure that people have sufficient opportunity for notice that the meetings are at a time that the public can participate, that they know about it. Could we go back to the schedule, please? Can you go back? Oakland today,
Yes.
right? Just for my own edification, how much notice, how broad was the notice? San Diego's in a few days.
We started...
I didn't hear about it, but
Yeah.
I've been taken up with other things, but I would think that I would be one of the first to hear about it, and I didn't. So I am concerned about the dissemination of this.
Yeah. We did work, had a public outreach entity or firm brought on board to help us with that. We have been doing since going back quite a ways. Again, we've been working on this for a while, and we've made every effort we could to get this out. And it's unfortunate that we apparently, and we have heard from others, that they were not aware of it. And this is one of the things we're hoping to address as we go forward as part of the rail plan update.
Yeah, I don't mean to beat this, but it's an ongoing concern. We're working very hard to establish credibility with the public, transparency, and one of the first elements of that is adequate notice and appropriate time for people to give real input and not just have a pro forma, well, here it is.
Yeah.
It sounds like a month is a long time, but it really isn't in this busy world.
But we have been working overtime with all of our rail partners, all the regional planning agencies, working through our district offices. But as you point out, there have been some that apparently we did not do as good a job as we might have been able to.
Yeah, Jeff.
Mr. Morales?
I would just add, we've been working with Acting Secretary Brian Kelly, because this report goes through Caltrans and to the CTC, to address some of the issues and to see if there isn't an opportunity.
But, we get the brunt of the
sure.
negative comments. People don't understand the division of labor, and we're the ones that are out there that get the negative feedback.
Absolutely. And what we've been working with him on is to really to get to your point of whether there can be additional time allowed to maybe have the draft out there for public consideration and take into account all of the things that have happened over the last year in terms of advancing. So it is something that we're continuing to work on to see if we can ensure that there's adequate time for the public.
I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Since we have stopped you at this point, I was going to ask Mr. Bronte, could you give us a little insight into the kind of comments you got from the Sacramento open house?
We felt a very good open house was held over at the Railroad Museum. We had representatives of the Altamont Commuter Express coming up to join with us, the San Joaquin Regional Governance Group. We had the chair of the Capital Corridor, City Councilman Cohen. We had Mr. Wiley with the Executive Director of Sacramento RT, and we had probably 150 or so members of the general public there, both from planning agencies and those who are just interested in rail in general. So we're looking forward to what we think will be a good turnout at all the various venues.
Great.
So these are, again, the group we've been meeting with. We'll be meeting with them through March, including the state and regional planning agencies, the rail corridor agencies. The freights have been very actively involved. Passenger rail operators, the public, and along with the tribes. And we have done quite a bit of media outreach as best we can over the web, and again through our various partners to get make people aware of what's going on. And that concludes it, and I would like to take a second, because I normally tend not to, recognize the efforts of your staff, Matt Robinson, Lakita Huckabee, Mr. Albright, as helping us get through this entire very involved process. We processed hundreds of comments, both from local agencies as well as ones that you guys brought forward, and I think their efforts need to be recognized as well.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Questions from members of the board? Mr. Hartnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just some comments more than questions. This is the first state rail plan I've ever read, so I don't have anything to compare it to. But a number of things strike me. First, I'd like to second Board Member Shank's comments. I think this kind of document, to elevate it to a status beyond pro forma, it takes adequate time to be circulated among the transportation professionals and directly affected stakeholders, as well as the broader community and business interests, because it is such an important document, and if it's to be treated more than just a pro forma one, it needs a buy-in from people, and they don't get that if they don't see it and feel like they're part of the process. Secondly, I'm pleased that when we were developing the revised business plan, you, Mr. Chair, championed the high-speed rail system as being a key part of a statewide rail system. And when you were discussing that and we're all talking about it, you weren't discussing in the context of, well, there's an upcoming state rail plan document and we have to make sure we comply with that. You were talking about something real and important for the entire state and how high-speed rail fits in with the overall state rail plans. And to me, high-speed rail is such an important part now of the rail fabric of our state that the timing of this plan is really important. Not just because we have to meet federal requirements. I think it's great that the federal requirements are out there and that we do fit those, and that we are a national project and we are a state project with tremendous focus. And so I think this is a really important document. Too often in many other hats that we wear, we see plans that gather so much dust, and it's why bother reading them. And I think this is a different one. This is important, and I'm pleased with the treatment of high-speed rail in it. I'm pleased that the staff has actively participated in the preparation of this as it relates to high-speed rail and related elements. And when people have board members have their questions satisfied or comments they'd like to make, I'd like to move that we authorize the CEO to issue the letter that's requested in support of it, provided that he finds it in conformance with our revised business plan and other policies.
Okay. First of all, that's very well said. I suspect that all of your colleagues want to associate themselves with those remarks, and Mr. Hartnett has moved that we authorize the CEO to issue a letter of support of the statewide rail plan, provided that he finds that it is consistent with our revised 2012 business plan, and it was seconded by Vice Chair Shank.
Are we finished? I don't think it's finished.
Did you?
Yeah, we're done.
Yeah, he did. He did finish. Other comments that people would like to make? Mr. Morales would.
Just a few points, Mr. Chairman, and in response to Mr. Hartnett's questions and looking ahead to comments, areas we will continue to focus on and why this plan is important. One, I think it really does reflect a fundamental change in how the state is looking at rail as part of its transportation system. Very importantly, this plan needs to advance the issue of how to prioritize and coordinate investments and services going forward, which is a real change for the state. We should not gloss over the fact that having a plan, an approved plan, is a fundamental requirement to be eligible for federal funding. So there has to be a plan in place, but I think even more beyond that, the better the plan, the better positioned we will be as a state to receive federal funding, and also to help the state determine how it might choose to meet needs through state funding in the future as well. So we take this very seriously, and we'll be looking at the plan in those respects and others, and we'll prepare comments as suggested.
Okay. I would just make following remarks. I started on it last night, read some of the key chapters and have not finished it yet, but I'm certainly impressed by its scope and the comprehensive nature of it. And I think, going back to what Mr. Bronte, you said about some of the significant issues, one is this really shows the, I think, wisdom of the governor's reorganization plan for transportation, because the Caltrans Division of Rail historically has been there to oversee the operation of some of the Amtrak passenger lines here in California. And for those who don't know, in California we have 3 of the 5 highest ridership levels among Amtrak national passenger rail service. So even though our state is well known for its car culture, the fact of the matter is that Californians are really embracing rail travel, and the growth rate on that is extraordinary. So the governor's reorganization plan will put the Caltrans as well as the California High-Speed Rail Authority into a single transportation agency, and we'll be able to work more closely together and coordinate. Second, I appreciate Mr. Hartnett's comments about the integrated rail plan, but it was really an expression of all the work of members of this board, your work on the peninsula with the blended approach, and the things that this board has been trying to do to show the importance of high-speed rail to California's future. So we now are seeing, I think, the real implementation of this vision, and the fact that Caltrans has this statewide rail plan, that it dovetails and meshes with our 2012 business plan. We're seeing the transportation agencies that are responsible for rail in this state coming together and working together, and that's going to benefit all Californians. So, Mr. Bronte, I want to thank you for your presentation this morning, and we look forward to working closely with you, your staff, and with all of the operators of rail systems in California to achieve this vision of a truly integrated rail network.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thank you. Okay, before we move to our next item, just a housekeeping measure. Before we move to our next item, we have to vote on the last item. Thank you. Why don't I stop and take a drink of water at this point? And we will ask the Secretary to call the roll on the motion that was put forward by Mr. Hartnett and seconded by Vice Chair Schenck.
Vice Chair Schenck?
Yes.
Vice Chair Richards?
Yes.
Mr. Umber? Mr. Hartnett?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Chairman Richard?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Hartnett. Appreciate keeping me on track here. A housekeeping measure. We had some people, I'm assuming that they had arrived early for our normal 10 o'clock start, who wanted to speak to us today. We started at 9. What I'm going to do is we're going to entertain those speakers, but at the end of the regular agenda, because we don't have an action item next. I don't think that anybody's prejudiced by speaking at that point, and so we'll do that. We'll move on now to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the Memorandum of Understanding between the Authority and the Peninsula Corridor Joint Powers Board, or Caltrain. And good morning, Ben Traposis.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Ben Traposis, Northern Regional Director. Excuse me. As you are aware, the Peninsula Corridor Joint Powers Board and the Authority staff have been working together to negotiate an updated Memorandum of Understanding to replace the existing agreements with the JPB, namely the 2004 Memorandum of Understanding and the 2009 Agreement and Amendment. As I presented in December of last year, the updated agreement is necessary to reflect current policies defined in the revised business plan, the 2012 9-party MOU led by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and the high-speed rail early investment strategy for a blended system in the Peninsula Corridor. Through the leadership of our own lead counsel, Tom Falens, the Joint Powers Board lead counsel, David Miller, Project Chief Marion Lee, and Caltrain's Government Affairs Director, Seamus Murphy, we crafted a revised document that we believe meets the goals that we set out to achieve last year. The updated agreement defines a new partnership for planning, environmental review, design, and construction of the blended system. The elements described in the updated agreement include a commitment to respect the interests of the communities through which the blended system will be constructed. The MOU clearly identifies the 2 principal early investment projects, the corridor electrification, full electrification, and the construction of an advanced signal system.
The agreement terminates, importantly, the 2004 MOU and the 2009 agreement and initiates project planning focused exclusively on the blended system. The agreement directs the blended system must be designed, constructed, and operated in a manner consistent with Joint Powers Board and High-Speed Rail Authority operational requirements and with consideration of the interests of the cities served by the Caltrain system. The agreement also includes a recognition that it will be necessary for the parties to negotiate one or more agreements at a future date to facilitate the construction and shared use of the Peninsula Rail Corridor by the authority in order to fully implement and operate the blended system. The revised MOU directs the JPB and the authority to establish an organizational framework that will incorporate procedures for the approval by both parties of the early investment projects and the blended system designs. Staff has sought and received input from the Peninsula Corridor, including the city-county partners, the Caltrain local policymaker group, the 9-party MOU signatories, and other stakeholders and community members regarding the update of the MOU. It's important to note that the Peninsula Joint Powers Board received an informational report similar to this at their board meeting last week on February 7th, and they received no significant additional comments. Finally, both Authority and Joint Powers Board staff are planning to request approval of the MOU at our respective board meetings on March 7th of this year. That's my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Mr. Hartnett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a bit of history with the MOUs, and to be perfectly honest, I cannot remember if in 2004 I was involved in the initial MOU, but I do recall being involved in the 2009 revised MOU as I was on the Caltrain board at the time. And the current proposed revised MOU is, in my mind, importantly needed because it reflects the revised business plan, which obviously we didn't have in 2009, and reflects, I think, in a very consistent way, our goal at the High-Speed Rail Board for implementing in a reasonable, rational way the blended system for high-speed rail. And I think it's a good template for perhaps use in other circumstances for us. I think it's a remarkable document in the sense that it really brings together what we developed in the revised business plan with the community interests. And it shows how you can work together with a community and communities to accomplish something that makes sense for everybody. And I think that's what this revised MOU does. And so I'm really pleased with it from a high-speed rail perspective. In 2009, I had my Caltrain board perspective, and I thought it was a reasonable document at the time. But with my high-speed rail hat, I really like this MOU from a high-speed rail perspective. I think it accomplishes what we need and is consistent with the needs of the community.
Thank you, Mr. Hartnett, and thanks for your work in that community. It's you've been an important voice on this board representing an area that we're going to be working with very closely. Other comments? You want to add anything?
I would just add that I think one of the other significant things about this MOU is it really reflects a true partnership between us and the JPB. It's not just that we'll be kind of in each other's neighborhood. I mean, this is a true joint effort going forward, and that's an important change and does need to be reflected through the MOU. So it's an important step forward.
And then I would just add that I think, given some of the more controversial aspects of our plans on the peninsula, I think it's very appropriate that this MOU gives a lead role to Caltrain in working on a lot of the community-impacted areas. And so, as my colleague Mr. Hartnett said, it's evidence of a partnership there, and it implements our plans very well. So next steps on this would be that this would come back for formal consideration and adoption by this board in May. Is that
March?
In March next month.
Excuse me.
Okay. All right. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trebosis. Next, we'll have, excuse me, a very important briefing by John Tapping, our Chief Risk Officer, on the high-speed rail safety system.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members. It's a pleasure to be before you again. I look forward to this presentation. I am the risk manager for the California High-Speed Rail Authority, and one of the things I recognized when I came on was actually a robust safety system, policies and procedures in place at the authority. And as I've gotten more involved in system safety, by the way, I recognize that I think we needed to have a one-point contact in the authority for safety, and it fit well under the risk management arm. So I am also the one-point contact for system safety with the authority. But I was very impressed with the robust program that we currently have in place. It's state of the practice. There's a lot of innovative things we're doing with the hazard risk analysis that I think is leading edge stuff. And also, it's been in place some time. There's one of the important elements which I'll discuss briefly is incorporating prevention through design. So you need to identify your risks and hazards early and look at the mitigation options and incorporate them as you move forward into the design. And of course, we're doing that right now. So. Thanks, Angie. Okay. First off, there are system safety considerations, 4 major categories here. The FRA requires that the authority certify the safety of the system prior to revenue operation. And achieving FRA approval requires basically compliance with these 4 measures. Now, system safety considers all the critical elements of the system, tying them all together with all the interfaces. So they are all interrelated, which is why it needs to be a comprehensive, holistic approach. You can't separate construction from design, from operations, from maintenance, because they all feed each other. And you have to design a system that meets all these safety requirements as you move forward. So that includes the rolling stock, the infrastructure such as the overhead contact system, the stations, the viaducts, the tunnels, the operating procedures with employees, interfaces with surrounding communities, and such. So the authority has, in accordance with FRA requirements and the certification process, which is a very heavy documented validation and verification process, all of these measures in place. First one, safety and security policy statement. I know that's too small for you to read probably, but it was attached to your handouts. And basically the policy statement clearly identifies the accountability and the delegations for safety and security. And as coming on, this was prepared under my direction fairly recently. And it was one of the first policy statements approved by the authority as we went forward. So basically it establishes the safety and security of employees, contractors, passengers, and the general public as primary considerations for all persons and entities who are associated with the California high-speed rail system. So it sets forth the guiding policies and procedures in place as we move forward. Moving on. Quite simply, it's somewhat like the risk management program, hazardous management program is analogous to really a risk management program where you identify the risk, you do the analysis, you provide the mitigations, And at some point, there is an acceptable residual risk that the authority is willing to entertain. And the risk-based hazardous management process was mandated by Congress for passenger rail programs in the Safety Improvement Act of 2008. And so, again, from what I've seen, the technical analysis we're undertaking is really state of the practice as we move forward. Basically, then, it's a risk-based hazard management system where you prioritize the resources, that is, the mitigations, to the hazards and have the highest level of risk associated. It's a probability and impact analysis and for any potential unsafe condition. And it is the common safety method that is internationally and accepted through railways, including high-speed rails, found in the European Commission regulations. There is some level of intricacy about delegation. For example, we certification of safety elements in the final design will be the responsibility of the design builder. However, we will have checks and balances in place through our PCM contract, other contracts, and authority oversight under my direction to provide the necessary checks and balances. But there is a level of delegation of safety issues as through our various contracts. I mentioned before prevention through design, which includes a hierarchy of application of controls, avoidance, elimination, substitution, engineering controls, warning, administrative controls. All of these things are assessed during the process that's outlined here on this slide. Another important element is the firearm life safety program. And when I came on, this was a robust work in progress. There's been initial outreach to emergency responders in Madera, Fresno, Kings, and Tulare County. Monthly meetings with the Office of State Fire Marshal are undertaken, and I attend all of those meetings. And the key points is that from coming out of this analysis or these meetings is that the high-speed rail trainway is a sealed corridor, which is an FRA requirement, with restricted access, fencing walls the entire length. Access egress points for emergency responders are located every 2.5 miles along the right-of-way. Trenches and stairway access every 2,500-foot intervals. So this is really a partnership with all our locals and the State Fire Marshal process that's ongoing. It's working very well when we have routine meetings that we set up, and very pleased with the way that's progressing. Let's talk a little bit about construction safety. I mentioned before the pass-through of in the design builder's project management plan is part of it is the safety and security plan for the program, and so he has to submit that to the authority, and we will accept that or work towards acceptance of that. So there is some delegation. The design builder naturally is responsible for worker safety, but there are some regulations and such, and so we provide a verification of validation as we go through.
Could you just add a little more color to that? I want to understand better how this is. You have a construction safety manager, and will that person then have a team for the jobs? How is that going to work? I'd like to understand that better.
In our solicitation for the design builder, and it's part of the contract, they are required to have a site-specific safety and security plan. And part of that plan is a designated authority by the design builder to take responsibility for all safety, and the safety and security plan is submitted to the authority through the PCM oversight contractor, and we will provide the necessary review of that document. But we also will provide, like we would with quality control or any other contract provision in a design build contract, some level of validation and verification of those safety measures.
Yeah, I understand what's going into the paper. I'm
Okay.
trying to understand the practicality of how it's going to be done. Will there be designated people at each job site? Will there be rotating? I mean, we're ultimately responsible, as
Yes.
you know. So who do we ultimately turn to for verification? I mean, all of the plans are great, and we need them, and they have to, but who's implementing them?
The design builder will have a central person responsible for safety. The PCM, which is an agent of the authority, a separate contract, which does the oversight, will have a specific person for safety, and they will interact. And then the PMT also has safety expertise that will be woven into that process. But at the very top, I am the safety officer, and so I oversee the whole.
I want to know who's at the very bottom, who feet on the ground.
Just to clarify, so the design builder, once brought on board, will be required to put together this plan, which will identify who will be on the ground, by title, by responsibility, specific people designated to be responsible for implementing and overseeing the safety of their workers. The primary responsibility on the ground is theirs to do it. Our role then is to ensure that they comply with the plan that they have put forward. It's also important to know they will not be given notice to proceed to start work until and unless we have approved that plan. So it's not just that they put a plan together. We actually look at it, review it, and have to approve it before they can put it in place. And then we will ensure that through our construction manager and then ultimately through people working for John that, in fact, they are complying with their own plan on the ground.
And will we have an opportunity as a board, I mean, I know we're not going to be the ones doing it, but just to understand their plan and how they intend to ensure as much as possible the risk management?
Certainly.
Yeah.
We can, there are a number of plans that they have to submit to us for approval before they proceed that we can certainly share that with the board and allow whatever opportunity you would like to question it, look at it, and talk to the builder, designer.
Well, as I say, I abide by the philosophy. Just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean they're not after me. And risk management is so essential, and getting it right at the get-go is very important. And I, for one, would like to know more about it. If others of my colleagues would, maybe we can have a little workshop on it or something. But I want to know that we have people who are executing the responsibility that we ultimately bear.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks. I also might add that the authority, as the owner, does have the authority under all of these contracts, if it does see a potentially unsafe situation, to step in and direct as appropriate. So we still have those contractual responsibilities, which is good.
Just to give a sense, Ms. Schenk, of the level of detail that's already being gone into, John mentioned that we've interacted with, say, for instance, the Madera Fire Department. We've gone through with them plans looking at places where we have elevated structure, what the height of the elevated structures are, and whether they have equipment that can reach those heights and things like that. I mean, so it is a very detailed examination to ensure that not just during the construction, but then ultimately in the operation of the system, that safety will be ensured to the greatest degree possible.
Good. Well, I take comfort in that. Thank you.
Okay, just in summary then, I wanted to summarize the 4 points that are included in our safety program. A policy statement that we have fully executed. We're well underway with our hazard management program, which is in conformance with FRA guidance in how we establish prevention through design. And we're well underway with our coordination with all the local fire and safety line people. And lastly, we have strong contract provisions that are passed through to our design builder, and also to our construction manager to ensure safety as we enter construction later this year. So that concludes my presentation.
Other questions or comments from board members? I have a few, but I'll reserve them. All right, let me just raise a couple of issues. First of all, I appreciate the briefing, and I think it's very important that we have a single officer who has these responsibilities lodged within his purview. So that's very good. I guess I just want to kind of raise our eyes and look down the road a little bit to the future, because it's important to establish a safety culture as we move forward. And so the two questions that come to mind, I don't think we have answers for them today. But the first is, as was pointed out by one of our speakers this morning, there are particular safety challenges associated with the operation of blended service, because by definition, we're not talking about areas that have dedicated right-of-way, for example. And we know that there are some specific engineering challenges for traffic separation and so forth. But at some point in the future, I'd want to have a briefing or get an understanding of the specific steps that we would be taking, working with Caltrain or Metrolink, in shared corridors where we're not talking about fully discrete high-speed rail, because I think it brings a much higher level of attentiveness that we need to have, and we need to think about that. So again, we're not at the point of those operations. Similarly, when we get to those operations, it's not too early to start thinking about it now. Our business plan lays out a business model where we build public infrastructure with public dollars, but we essentially offer, license, a concession to a private operator to come in and operate on our facility. And similar to our oversight of the design-build contractor, there will need to be some understanding of, even though we're turning over that operation to the private operator, as Ms. Schenk just pointed out, we're the ones who are ultimately going to be responsible. And so I think as we move forward, we're going to want to understand also what the interactions are between the business model that we've described, one of licensing operations to others, and our public responsibilities to assure that the public is always protected in that. And again, I don't think it's too early to start thinking about that down the road. And finally, the last point is somewhat painful, but I spent a number of years as an executive at Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and 5 years after I left, they had a tragic circumstance in which their gas pipeline blew up in San Bruno. 8 people were killed and 39 homes were destroyed, and many people were injured. And the thing that was remarkable about it was that in my time there in that corporate setting, we always prided ourselves as having a safety culture. And the safety culture involved always making sure that our crews were out there with hard hats and setting aside safety cones, always making sure that we started every meeting with a safety briefing so that if there were an earthquake, people would know how to evacuate the building. But it was all personal safety. And I spent a lot of time reading analyses and independent critiques that were done afterwards, and I came to realize that there was a difference between personal safety and a lot of the things we're talking about here, making sure that our workers are taken care of, that our passengers are. But there was a broader, more systemic safety question that PG&E had clearly missed. How did financing and business decisions impact the overall safety of the system on a strategic level? And we were sort of blinded by the fact that we congratulated ourselves on all of the personal safety stuff we were doing, and the organization missed the much more fundamental safety question. So I guess what I would say is I'd actually commend to you to read some of the independent analysis both by the NTSB and a group that was chartered by the Public Utilities Commission in reviewing that accident. The person who headed that, Paula Rosbud, had been a board member of Delta Airlines, and this was a big issue that they had faced in the airline industry, again, personal safety versus more systemic safety issues. And as we create our own safety culture here, Mr. Tapping, I'd really like to make sure that we don't fall into that trap.
Well said.
That we make sure that we're really thinking about this in the broadest possible way. And I think that there are some tragic examples out there that we can learn from. And I'm not suggesting, sir, that you haven't thought about this, but I just want to raise this issue to our level at the board because we learned the hard way that there's a real distinction between those two things. Mr. Wilson?
Yeah. I yield to no one on fascination with details and being in the weeds. But cultural issues are driven by all types of vectors of thought process. There is no difference between systemic safety issues and personal, and we ought not to define it in that way. We ought to be very clear that safety issues are all systemic, and they are about everyone and every community we touch. But I think this board needs to be very careful here about doing more of management's work and less of the board's work, which is oversight. So, I mean, if board members want to have deep dives, as everyone in management here knows I do, we need to do that separate from this meeting because we don't want to be managing the business. That's personal. And I think we want to be very careful about the culture of oversight because the minute you become so enamored of being in the weeds, you can't oversee yourself. Right. So we need to be very careful about that, and I just mentioned that.
Well, that's why I suggested a workshop separate from this.
Right, and I agree with that. I think all of us are committed to a level of board governance that recognizes that distinction that you just talked about, and we have an extremely capable CEO, and he has built an extremely capable staff. Yet to be reviewed, yes. But I was only trying to share that one experience to just say that as we approach our governance task, I think I just wanted to suggest that our frame of reference be broader. But I did not want that. You're wise to keep us back from actually doing this work. We have competent people who are in charge of that. So.
I would say that I'm sure the PG&E board wish that they had
they needed to have a little more diligence about what they did. Mr. Hartnett.
So, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think all the comments raised two issues, and one is the board role as it relates to policy, and secondly, the board role as it relates to oversight. And I think it's important that we don't miss the policy issues so that the management knows the framework within which it's operating. And the oversight issue is one in which, well, we're not down in the weeds, but we have certain reporting protocols by which we're able to learn and hold accountable those people who work for us. And so I know we've talked about that for other subject areas, and I think it's important as high-speed rail moves forward that we be sensitive to what it is we want to hear from our CEO at our meetings that will inform us on things over which we feel that we should have some continuing oversight so that we can address issues in advance of issues becoming problems, and so if there are problems, they are brought to our attention so that we can deal with them to the extent we have a role in doing so. So I think over time, as this whole organization matures in the work that it's doing or evolves in the work that it's doing, I think we need to make sure that we have the protocols of reporting to us are necessary.
Thank you.
If I might add one thing, one of the policies that I did put in place was a monthly meeting with a task group for safety, and then there's an executive level committee which Jeff sits on, and Tom Falens and others. When there's a significant safety type of decision to be made. So I think there's a process internally with the authority to elevate critical issues. So that may help in the information management.
Well, I think this will be a continuing and evolving subject, and we will find the right balance that Mr. Rossi and Mr. Hartnett talked about. And I know that everybody on the board is very serious about this issue. So, Mr. Morales.
Just on point in terms of us executing our responsibilities. And as part of building the team, one of the reasons I was so pleased to be able to bring Frank Baca on board is his experience at Amtrak, particularly overseeing the Northeast Corridor, where there are literally dozens of different operators running over shared track, intercity, freight, regional. So that hands-on experience in dealing with the issues that you referred to earlier in terms of how you manage a blended operation are being brought to bear, as we not only as we look ahead to operation, but in terms of how we actually move forward with the design and the planning for the system. So we are building a team with these issues in mind as well.
Okay, that's good. And Mr. Tapping, once again, we're very pleased that you've joined us from Caltrans and that you're performing these functions on safety and risk management. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that is our last item. We will pick up on the public comments for the people who came in late. Before we, well, why don't we do that now? Then I'll do this. Okay, so I have a few slips. Dan Dolan, and he'll be followed by Paul Guerrero. Morning, Mr. Dolan.
Oh, thank you, Chairman Richard. My remarks are for CEO Morales for the most part, and also Tom Flins and Patricia Jones. I'm Dan Dolan. I'm an advisor and spokesperson for Stewart Title Guarantee of Houston. I gave you this document today that's helpful for the purpose of supporting a letter that I gave the board on May 4th, 2012, where I talked about a 400-foot wide congressional grant corridor that was used for the first transcontinental railroad that was effective July 1, 1862. And you can imagine they didn't have phones or fax machines in 1862, so Leland Stanford, the president of Central Pacific Railroad, got notice of the Pacific Railroad Act months later, and as a result of that, he created a general assignment of all of their rights for 400,000 acres between San Francisco and Sacramento to assign it to a straw man named Timothy Page. Timothy Page then assigned that to Western Pacific. Why this is useful to you is it's an example of creating a shell company, and the authority may want to do something similar. In my days as a project manager of acquisitions for Petro Lewis Corporation in Denver, I handled and coordinated the due diligence on over $1 billion worth of oil and gas property acquisitions. And when we took title to property, just like when the authority is going to take title to property and land for improvements, we put the property in something we called Partnership Properties, Inc., and that was composed of 3 attorneys in fact. And I'm proposing and suggesting that you, the authority, may want to create something, let's call it California High-Speed Partnership, and you could have CEO Morales and Tom Flins and Patricia Jones to act as attorneys in fact, and you can change those attorneys in fact over time after you appoint them. And that way, when you take title to these 1,100 parcels of land, it can flow into your shell company, and then when you're done with it, you can deed it to whoever you want to, the authority or whatever, but that might help you for lots of reasons. And another thing was when Central Pacific Railroad deeded all their property to their shell company, Western Pacific, they eventually wound up the affairs of Western Pacific in 1870 and had a merger and consolidation in 1872. But you could do something similar and wind down that acquiring partnership if you wanted to. But what they did that was very helpful was in the United States of America patent number 4 that was effective April 9, 1870, which ran from the U.S. to Central Pacific Railroad of the lands that they were promised to be patented. They had an agent named Charles McLaughlin who built the first transcontinental railroad from Sacramento to San Francisco, and he had identified public lands that the railroad needed for their route. And so he had a list that was effective as of February 1, 1870, and recited in this patent is the fact that he then gave that list to the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Interior, who gave an official statement saying, this is the dividing line between public lands and state of California lands. So the United States can give patents to those lands on this list, and that's what they did to the railroad. So what I'm suggesting that in the 4 or 5 counties for this initial construction segment, that pick some future date, let's say July 1st, 2013, and say the land titles or whatever it is, however they may appear as of that date, that's kind of going to be our effective date, you might say, of all our transfers into this holding partnership company. So it'll make things simpler when these deeds all trickle in over months and years, that you kind of have a reckoning date. And that's what they did on the first transcontinental railroad. And that's
Thank you very much, Mr.
recommendation.
Dole. Appreciate that. It's an interesting perspective. Paul Guerrero, followed by Ms. Lacombe. I think you filled this out as a generic card, but I'm pretty sure it's you. So, okay.
Before I start, I want to thank the board for the opportunity. We came in attended because we thought it was 10 o'clock when the meeting started.
Creatures of habit, I understand.
CAHSRA, the apparent low bidder. Well, let me go back on this here. The California High-Speed Rail's transparency has gotten a little fogged up. The word on the street is that this particular contract, the contract for the disparity study, is being led by the good old boys in the back room. And I hope it's not true. Okay. This contract calls for 100% small business utilization. The total contract price, this is out from the spec, is to be achieved through the utilization of firms in any combination and at any level who are certified as small businesses. And one of the questions was asked, can they use other than a small business on their team? And the answer was, you can use as many small businesses as you want on your team, but they all are going to be small businesses. This is a set-aside for small business. That's the way it was started out. GCAP, the apparent low bidder, is a certified small business. However, it's a major subconsultant who will do most of the work on the contract. BBC is not. In the past, BBC has performed a lot of disparity studies, and GCAP has been its sub and done some of the filing. But because this contract called for a small business, GCAP was set out as the token small business. GCAP has never performed a disparity study, and an addendum that came out on the contract allowed the prime to use its subcontractor's experience as its own to meet the requisite requirement that the prime have performed 5 disparity studies. We're asking for 2 things. First, that the board have an investigation conducted of the process by which this contract was led. Most of this stuff never even came before your small business committee. Okay. And second, that the authority keep its commitment that businesses will not be paid for work performed that did not meet the small business goal. On this contract, the goal is 100%. If only 50% of the work is performed by small businesses, then pursuant to your regulation, which we've heard many times up here, the other 50% should not be paid. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Guerrero. Ms. Lacombe?
Thank you, and happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to still speak to you today.
Of course.
I'm going to address two different issues here. One is from APAC itself, and the other is from our attorney from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. The one from APAC is regarding lack of transparency and a particular recommendation that we'd like to make. First of all, we just wanted to state that APAC is in full support of this project, especially, as far as we've come for small businesses, disabled veterans, and so on. But we are definitely not off to a good start on the actual implementation of procurement and contracting. APAC members have identified issues of concern practically with every RFP and RFQ that has been let. The authority has had many negative public relations issues and some very serious opposition from individuals, organizations, and public agencies. The reoccurring theme throughout, however, is the question of transparency. We don't question the board's sincerity on the issue of transparency. That has been made very obvious to us. However, there seems to be a glaring contrast between what the board tells the public and what the public perceives. Our recommendation is that the authority get an independent, objective assessment, appraisal of the authority's procurement, contracting, and selection process as soon as realistically possible before any more contracts are awarded. Another government agency or even a consultant could probably perform the assessment. The authority's credibility is at stake here. Before we move forward on contracting, and there's going to be a lot of contracts coming up, let us make sure that there is full disclosure and clarity in the authority's procurement and contracting procedures. Thank you. Now from the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. It's also to Chairman Richard and authority board members. And this is also regarding the disparity study contract. On behalf of APAC, I write to express our strong concern with the process used for awarding the contract for the authority's disparity study. At the very least, the process creates an appearance of impropriety that should be addressed publicly and transparently before any further action is taken. We have been following CAHSRA closely since filing a complaint with Federal Rail Administration. And we are pleased to see that this contract was out for the disparity study. Although we thought that it was budgeted a little too low, we were pleased that at least the RFP was requiring the contractor to have prior experience in conducting disparity studies, and that the authority was also requiring the contractor itself to be a California small business. As Paul Guerrero has already talked about GCAP, I'm not going to go into that again. But from what we understand, the authority has determined that GCAP nonetheless meets the RFP criteria of having performed disparity studies and presumably other requirements such as being knowledgeable about legal background and relevant guidances through its sub-consultants. This fact alone, that the prime contractor is apparently subcontracting out the core work of the project to a sub-consultant, is problematic. Even more troubling, however, is our understanding that this sub-consultant is a non-California, non-SVE firm that is typically the prime on disparity studies. However, this firm could not be a prime under this RFP since it is not a California firm nor an SVE. In other words, the only way for this team to be responsive to the RFP was for GCAP, the California SVE, to be the prime, even though it appears to lack the core experience and expertise called for in the RFP. As members of the community looking in on this process from outside, we are troubled by what we see. Perhaps there is a logical explanation for this process, but if so, it is incumbent upon the authority board and staff to provide it publicly and transparently. Otherwise, our concern is that this award process will sow community distrust in the authority's SBE, DBE program and the contract and procurement process. The authority's policies and programs can only succeed when it is scrupulous about avoiding the appearance of impropriety, particularly as to issues that could undermine the entire integrity of the authority. We therefore urge you to address this issue before taking any further action on the disparity study. Sincerely, Oren Selstrom, APAC Legal Counsel.
Okay.
Handed you copies of all of these.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lacombe. Let me just say one thing about this at this point. Obviously, any such allegations are ones that we take seriously. And I always think it's unfortunate when people raise transparency issues, because I, frankly, have never served on a public body that is more transparent than this organization. But having said that, this issue came to my attention, and I have inquired from the staff, and there are, I guess, a number of dimensions of it. But my understanding is that during the time of the bid conferences, the pre-bid conference, a question was raised as to whether or not a subcontractor having performed disparity studies would be acceptable, and whether this was an answer that, for better or for worse, whether people like this answer or not, the answer was given through the transparent process of the pre-bid conference that, yes, that would be acceptable. So at least that dimension of this, that the one company that bid with a subcontract that had performed the disparity studies was one that was openly raised and discussed prior to the bids coming in. Mr. Morales, I don't know if you want to address any other issues, or if it's more important or appropriate to have our counsel address them to us after review. But I did want to say that this is an issue that had certainly come to my attention because of this board's commitment to meeting our goals and to doing it the right way, and with the recognition that a disparity study is an essential element of that. So I don't mean to put you on the spot, Mr. Morales, but I think I just did. So
I'm becoming used to that. Just very briefly, I want to join you in rejecting flatly any suggestion that there's lack of transparency in this process, or backroom deals. Right? Having worked on programs here in the state, around the country, and around the world, again, I would agree. People may not always agree with decisions, but I have never seen a program as transparent as this, and I would hope people would choose words appropriately. In terms of the particulars, I think it's best not to necessarily get into all the details, and counsel can deal, but I will say on a number of the issues raised, specific questions were raised, allegations or questions raised very specifically answered, and the initial questions were proven to be inaccurate. So we take those questions seriously when they come up. We deal with them. If there are problems, we will deal with those, but we're also not going to undo things if there's nothing wrong with the process. And we are committed to a process. We can't start changing a process because some people are winners and some are not. And the process will continue to be transparent and open and fair to everyone involved.
And let me say, I would like to just get some assurance from staff that the issues that are being raised here with respect to the eligibility of the participants in this contract, that they are looked at and perhaps looked at again to make sure that we're there. So we're going to take these seriously in terms of the challenges that have been raised, because we want to make sure that it is in full compliance with the procurement procedures, not only of this board, but also we're governed by procurement procedures by the Department of General Services and the other state contracting laws. And I would finally also say that if there are things about this process that in the future people want to try to raise in terms of different policy issues or things like that, I think we're always willing to have those conversations and to do that, because we would like to be, as I've said recently, when this issue was raised with me, we would like to be the gold standard for how we're doing this. This is a big, important project. But let's make sure that we have the facts on this. I think that we do, but let's just make sure that we're in full compliance, and then we'll move forward with that. Okay. Vice Chair Shane.
Yeah, thank you. Just to, I think both Ms. Lacombe and Mr. Guerrero know the commitment of each of us individually and this board collectively, that we are of one mind on many of these issues. But I, too, would like to caution, words have meaning, and unless there is pretty clear evidence, throwing about terms like backroom deals, they don't help. And I have a lot of confidence in, a tremendous amount of confidence in our management and their integrity. And again, unless there is something very specific, I would like us to keep the discourse on a level of disagreement where there is disagreement, but not make sort of these kinds of accusations that speak to individual and collective integrity unless there is proof.
Okay. We will, in a few...
Mr. Chairman.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rossi.
I would just like to echo my colleagues' statements. If we're going to move forward, we need to move forward in a positive vein.
Okay. In a few minutes, we're going to enter into closed session. I think that the room is not going to be available till 11 o'clock, or is it? We can use the other room? Okay. All right. Before we do that, I'd like to recognize the work of one of our staff people. It turns out that this is Angie Reed's last meeting as the board secretary, but fortunately we're not losing her from the organization because I believe she's been promoted. Is that correct? If not, then we're doing that right here.
Talk about micromanaging.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
New title, same pay.
I'm sorry?
New title, same pay.
New title, same pay, hopefully not. But in any case, Angie, thank you for your diligent work on behalf of the board. We appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck in your new capacity. And I hope that means I can still count on you for some support things, but that's neither here nor there.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, Angie. Okay, with that, the board will now enter into closed session to discuss the items per the agenda, and we'll reconvene afterwards. So.
you.
Okay, we'll be back in session to announce that the closed session has concluded and there are no actions to report. With that, this meeting of the High Speed Rail Authority is adjourned. Thank you.